regardless, now we have a very interesting, at least for me, I'm very interested in what we call it the symbolism. So each nation, culturally, they develop images, picture, art, but everything have a symbol. Like for example, if we look at here, we can say the symbolism of Iraqi culture, cuneiform language, qithara, and these kind of things which give you images of what exactly we're talking about. I mean, the area. Okay. Now I'm welcoming two esteemed guests here. Dr. Nضال Haj Dرويش. Dr. Nضال Haj Dرويش is very interesting bio. I can summarize it very hardly, so please forgive me if I miss anything. He's a doctorate in archaeology, specializing in Asian Near East. He got a BA from Syria, Damascus. He's a PhD in Oriental Archaeology. And it's multiple universities degrees. So it's
Martin Luther University,
Columbia University, and also here in London. So he's an archaeologist. Physically, he's an archaeologist going to excavate, and in Iraq, I think he got basically a study in Kirkuk.
in سليمانية.
سليمانية.
بستانسور دقردي كاجاو كل كمشك إن أربيل I excavated there, and in Syria in Tel Halaf, and in Germany in Magdeburg, and in Giosik.
So mashallah, that's what this is the quality of the guest speaker here. So alhamdulillah, he agreed and he came to join us. Now the next one, even more interesting, Dr. Nora Gailani. She's an archaeologist as well? No, but interest in archaeology, working as British Museum curator. I don't know what's that mean.
بالعربي أمينة متحف.
Okay, now I know what that means. Also, she's responsible for Islamic collection in the British Museum. She was in Glasgow for over 20 years. For some reason, she decided to come to London so that she can join us at this conference today. So how lucky we are. She's also a member of British Institution and and also the Museum of Iraq. So, no?
No.
Sorry. You tell us.
I'm an executive member of the British Institute for the Study of Iraq. And this is an archaeological organization that is part of the British Academy, and a public institution that supports research across Britain and, of course, any field across the world. So the British Institute for the Study of Iraq, as an academic institution, supports a lot of work in Iraq, including archaeological research. And now they also support research in other fields. So this year we sponsored 2 researchers to work on oil, studying the social history of the oil industry in Iraq, one in Basra and one in Kirkuk. And we look at other types of applications to do with studying Iraq in every field, basically. That's the Institute for the Study.
That's why I cannot explain all this. There's a few here from the president. So can we start with Dr. Nora?
Okay.
Okay. I think you can sit down.
Can I? Okay. Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be with you and speak about people and languages in Mesopotamia and Zagros regions. Can we have the slides? I will not speak a lot about the history or the grammar of languages. I will try in 10 minutes to present the most well-known languages in ancient Mesopotamia and Zagros region.
No.
So the area of Mesopotamia and Zagros were among the most linguistically and culturally diverse region in human history. So over thousands of years, they witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, whose languages profoundly shaped administration, literature, religion, and human history. I don't find any slides. The next slides, please. The next. Okay. Okay. So as we see on the map, we have some of the most well-known people, and so especially they spoke different languages in the area. We have the Meder in Iranian Kurdistan, Elamite in south of Iran, Persian in south of Iran. We have Sumerian in the south of Iraq, the Akkadian around Baghdad, and we have the Assyrians, so in the north. We have the Hurrian, who were present in the whole part of Kurdistan and Zagros. And we have Hittite in Anatolia, who controlled the north of Syria. We have Aramean peoples. Now you know the Assyrian, Chaldean, and Syriac people who speak now these languages. The next slide, please. So most languages actually, like today, belong to language families whose members share similar vocabulary and grammatical structures because they descend from a common ancestor, like Semitic languages, Indo-European languages. Some languages, called isolates, are not part of any family. That is, they are not demonstrably related to any other known language. There are also peoples whose languages are unknown, meaning the text of these languages have not yet been discovered. The next slide, please. I will start with the Sumerian, who populated in the south of Iraq. So we see the most famous cities: Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Erido, and other city, Umma, Adab. The Sumerian are the oldest nation who inhabited Iraq or the south of Iraq. Maybe they are there, they moved there around the end of the 7000 BC, so during the Ubaid culture. However, we have the writing or the script. The Sumerian invented cuneiform system or around the end of the 4th millennium BC. So then this writing developed during maybe lasted around 1,000 years. We have around 2,600. We have names of kings, and texts speak about historical events and the name of kings like Gilgamesh and other kings. Sumerian called their counties Ki-Ingir, and the name Sumer is an Akkadian word. So, and they call them their language Imigir, or native language, or noble tongue. Sumerian was the administration and literature language till the appearance of the Akkadian 2350 BC, the Akkadian who controlled the whole area in Mesopotamia. Sumerian, Akkadian became the dominant language in the area. Sumerian stayed spoken and as a literature and religious language in the south. And however, the Akkadian language became the dominant language in the area. Until the destruction of the Akkadian Empire around 2160, then we see again the Sumerian became again a very important language in the Mesopotamia, because the Sumerian again controlled Mesopotamia during the new Sumerian period. After that, when the Amorian, so the next slide please, Sumerian became the a literature language, and was taught at schools and temples till the 1st century BC, and sometimes some people say till the 1st century of our time. So the language was used for a long time. You can imagine from thousands of years till the 1st century, Sumerian was taught as a religious or literature language, because it was very important for the Akkadian scriber. The next slide, please. So the Akkadian, so the first mention of Akkadian go back to around 2350 BC. So the Sumerian mentioned the Akkadians. However, we have Akkadian words in Sumerian language, and we have Horitish words in Sumerian language. It was not a pure language, I can say. Sumerian, so Akkadian became a very used language during the 3rd and 2nd and 1st millennium, especially during the Akkad period, when they established a very big empire, as you see on the map. And during the 2nd millennium, we see 2 dialects of the Akkadian, so the Assyrian in the north and the Babylonian in the south. The next slide, please. So, as I mentioned it, so the Amorite were a West Semitic group. They came from the area of Syria, and they established many kingdoms at the very end of the 3rd millennium and beginning of the 2nd millennium. They used Akkadian language for writing. We have only maybe 1 or 2 texts have some words or sentences in Amorite language. They spoke a West Semitic language. However, the Akkadians spoke an East Semitic language. And we don't have texts in Amorite, as I mentioned, in Amorite language. We have only words or names which are has effect on Akkadian during the Amorite period. Akkadian, we have like Sumerians, we have the last text, so that go back to the 1st century in Akkadian language. The Akkadian was the diplomatic language in the 3rd and 2nd and 1st millennium. The next slide, please. The Aramean or Aramaic language, it is another Semitic group. So the Aramaic or Arameans inhabited Mesopotamia and the Levant from around the 2nd millennium, the beginning of the 2nd millennium. They formed small kingdoms and played an important role in the region's history. Aramaic first appeared in inscriptions between 920 and 600 BC, reflecting multiple local dialects. Later, Imperial Aramaic, during the last period of the New Babylonian period or Chaldean kingdom, we say, Aramaic became the most used languages in the area, especially the Aramaic alphabet. The Aramaic took the alphabet from the Phoenicians, who took the alphabet from a West Semitic group who developed an alphabet in the area of Sinai in Egypt. And this alphabet was actually taken by the Phoenicians, then by the Aramaic people, and by the Greeks, and now most people in the world write in the same alphabet, in the Phoenician alphabet or Aramaic alphabet. And the Aramaic was very used before the Islam period. So we can imagine that a Chinese emperor leave a script in two languages, Chinese and Aramaic. And many cultures used Aramaic alphabet. As I mentioned, so after the Islam, the Aramaic languages lost its significance in the area. However, we have now some peoples in Syria, in 3 villages in Syria around Damascus, Ma'lula, Bakha, and Jabadin, who speak Aramaic. 2 villages are Muslims and 1 are Christian. And we have in Iraq, so Chaldeans, Assyrians, and Syrians who speak East Syriac. So it is an East Aramaic dialect. The next slide, please. Yes. Then we have Hurrian, or Hurrian language. Hurrian, was dwelled or were present in the whole parts of Kurdistan and the Zagros area, as I mentioned at the beginning. Hurrian belonged to the Hurro-Urartian language family. So Urartians were the population in the today's Armenia and the area around the Lake Van in North Kurdistan. And both languages belong to a family. During the 3rd millennium, the Hurrians had many kingdoms in the area, and the Hurrian language in the 2nd millennium, especially during the establishment of the kingdom of Mitanni, who established an empire which extended from the Zagros in the east till the Mediterranean in the west. In that area, so the kings and spoke an Indo-European language, Mitanni language. However, the population, the most of the population spoke Hurrian, and they wrote in Hurrian language. However, they used Akkadian as well as an for administration and for diplomatic issues. They use it sometimes Akkadian as well. So we have the famous Amarna letters, many letters from kings in the Orient, from today, from Iraq, Anatolia, and Syria. Different kings sent letters to Egyptian, to the Amenophis III and IV, and most of them are in Akkadian. However, we have a long letter in Hurrian language. The next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Hurrian and Mitannian belong to the same family. Hurrian was used until the 12th century BC. After that, we don't know. However, some scholars think that the Hurrian, after the fall of the Mitanni kingdom by the Middle Assyrian kings or power, the Hurrian moved to the north and to the east. And the Urartian used at the beginning Assyrian script or cuneiform writing. However, later they used Urartian languages. The texts from this language go to the 9th century. And after the fall of the Urartian kingdom around 590 BC, we don't hear about the Urartian language. We hear about the Urartian in the Bisiton text around 521. So Bisiton is a very famous inscript from the Persian king Darius, so who left a long inscript in 3 languages: Akkadian, Elamite, and Persian. And in that inscriptions, he mentioned Urartu for the last time. The next slide, please. Then we have the Elamite, very famous group. The Elamite lived in southwestern Iran, mainly in Khuzestan and Faris, and spoke Elamite, a language isolate and related to other known languages like Hurrian and Urartians. They have their own family. Its earliest stage, Proto-Elamite, dates to around 3,300 until 2,800 BC. Some scholars now believe that the Elamite invented the script simultaneously with the Sumerian in the south of Iraq, so the Proto-Elamite. Elamite continued as an administrative language under the Achaemenid Empire in the 6th century, and is last mentioned in texts at the end of the Achaemenid period. Next slide, please. I will move to the Persian language. The Persians, an Indo-European people, inhabited southwestern Iran in the region of Faris. They emerged in the early 1st millennium and spoke Old Persian, written in cuneiform script, which invented by Darius around 520. Old Persian became the official language of the Achaemenid Empire around 550 to 330. It evolved during the Sasanian period and ultimately shaped modern Persian, Farsi. We have few languages or some languages which are poorly attested and less understood because we don't have texts written in these languages. Like Kassite, Gutian, Lulubian, Manian, and Median. The next slide, please. The next slide. Okay. So the Kassite ruled Babylonia from the 16th to the 12th century BC and are mentioned as early as the 18th century BC. Later references from the 1st century mention the Kassite by the Greek and in the Hamadan, Kermanshah, Luristan region of present-day Iran. Kassite is known primarily through personal and divine names, terms related to horse breeding, and a bilingual Akkadian Kassite word list. The next slide, please. The next slide. So go back, please. One slide. Okay, now. Then we have Lulubian and Gutian people who lived in the Zagros. So the center of Lulubian was around the city of Sulaimani in Iraqi Kurdistan and Shahrazur. So the home of this group. And the Gutian lived so in the south of the Lulubian. However, so their center, I can consider Kirkuk was their center, so of the Gutians. This both peoples are mentioned in Sumerian, Akkadian, New Assyrian or Middle Assyrian, so scripts from the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st millennium. However, we don't have texts in languages of these groups, and we especially in the Akkadian period, the Gutian controlled Mesopotamia, and they could destroy the Akkadian Empire around 2150. We hear about these people till the second part of the second millennium, first millennium. So the name of Guti are mentioned till the 3rd century BC, the name of Guti. And the Gutian helped the Achaemenid to control Mesopotamia. So during the 6th century BC, so when the Achaemenid attacked Babel in 539, so the Gutian helped the Achaemenid at that period. And the Lulubian, we hear about them till the 6th century BC. So from 2500 we hear about Gutian people till the 3rd century. We see thousands of years these people inhabited this area, and the Lulubian from 2400 till 600 BC. After that, we don't know what has happened. The next slide, please. Then the last language which I will mention is Median. Median, the Medes spoke an Indo-European language, Northwest Iranian, belonged to Northwest Iranian group like Belushi and so Persian. They belong to a family. The Medes lived in Northwest Iran and are first mentioned in the 9th century BC. They founded the Median Empire around 615 till 550. Median is poorly attested and survives mainly in personal names, place names, and few words in old Persian texts. And Herodot mentioned some Median words, and he speaks a lot about the Medes. Interestingly, a 15th century Armenian manuscript, which is a copy of an old inscript, contains a prayer in several languages, one labeled the language of the Medes. Linguist David Mackenzie identified it as an early Kurdish dialect, reflecting the medieval Armenian belief that Kurds were descendants of the Medes. And actually, it is not the first text who connect the Kurds with the Medes. So in Armenian texts, we hear about this word many times until the 18th century. Even Salah ad-Din in 3 inscriptions are mentioned as the Medes and the Kurds. Sometimes he is mentioned as the Kurds, and at the same time he is mentioned as from the race of the Medes. And thank you for your listening. I will not speak a lot. Maybe when you ask, we can speak more. I want to speak more, but Dr. Kawa said only 10 minutes. Therefore, I couldn't speak a lot about these languages.
Any question for Dr. Nidal or comments? Sure.
Thank you. Interesting subject. The question is, I don't know if it's relevant or not. When the script transferred to a different, when the cuneiform script transformed to a different form of letters, or like Arabic or Kurdish letters, or so all those old languages, they were written in cuneiform, yes?
Yes.
And then when they, any idea when they transferred all of a sudden to this?
To the alphabet.
To the alphabet, say?
Okay.
Or
yes. So actually
how do they transfer this?
Yes. Actually, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Sumerian invented the writing system in the south of Iraq today. And then the Akkadian adopted this cuneiform, and after the Akkadian, quite all nations adopted used the same cuneiform system, the same script, however, for their own languages. And sometimes they changed a bit for their languages. You know, each language has their own system. And in Ugarit, in Syria, they used the same cuneiforms as an alphabet. We have an alphabet in Ugarit, in Syria, which go back to 14th century BC. And we have the Persian used the cuneiform as alphabet. So Darius, around 522, wanted that the Persian have their own script, and they used this cuneiform as alphabet. And we can say, or scholars confirms, that West Semitic groups who worked at Sinai in Egypt around 18th century BC, they could invent an alphabet, and under the influence of Egyptian hieroglyphs, they could manage to invent an alphabet. And this alphabet was developed by the Phoenicians, then the Aramaic, and spread around the world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
However, the rest of the questions, Arabic, for example, Arabic was invented from the Aramaic, the Syriac and Nabat. So the Nabatean in Jordanian and Syriac in the north. So some scholars says the Arabic alphabet from the Nabatean, it is an Aramaic alphabet. Some others say from the Syriac in the north.
I was going to ask you about the impact of Alexander the Great. And did it have any impact on any of these languages, or in terms of Greek connection?
So Aramaic, for example, was like English today when Alexander arrived in the area. And Aramaic was, during the Hellenistic period, was like lingua franca language, was like English. However, we have texts in Greek as well. For example, in Hauraman, in Iraqi Kurdistan, 3 manuscripts were discovered, 2 are in Greece. So actually they had impact on this area. Yes, Aramaic was still used for many peoples in the area. However, Greece or Greek language as well.
Romans engaged the impact of Romans on the language? The Roman Empire.
So during the Roman Empire, so Iraq and Iran and part of Kurdistan was under control of the Parthians. And the Parthians used an Aramaic alphabet. They used an Aramaic alphabet. However, they wrote in Parthian. Parthians spoke an East Iranian language. So some people, when we say Iran, they understand we speak about Persian. No, it is when we say Iran, it means in Iran live different cultures, different languages, different groups. And Persian is one group. We have Persian, we have Kurdish, we have Talish, we have Tat, and Turkmen, or different groups.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nora?
I have my slides, please. I chose to talk to you about just a few of the examples that demonstrate the interconnectedness of the East with the West. Through Islamic art, of course, because that's my area of work, but also to focus on how the Middle East has its presence in the UK from the 9th century through findings, archaeological material that was found here in different parts of the UK. And the challenge for me is to help second generation, because I thought today will be second generation audience, but mashallah, to present to second generation concepts of belonging here that are beyond being just born here and carrying British citizenship, or but actually deeper roots that are associated with second generation's ancestors and cultural contexts beyond that. So, can I have the second slide? Thank you. In the British Museum, which is a good example for many museums across the UK, you will find Islamic art from all over the world, collected at different periods. The most common is during the colonial period, when Britain ruled many parts of the world and was interested in collecting examples of the material culture of those parts. So the Islamic galleries at the British Museum show that expanse of interest in collecting material culture. And then amongst it, there is material that didn't come from the colonies or the colonized parts of the world, nor from collectors who are Orientalist in nature and are interested in collecting material that's available on the market that has filtered through into Europe. In the British Museum and other UK museums, there is material relating to the Middle East that was found here in the UK in archaeological contexts, so much, much earlier. And I'm going to focus on three things. So first of all is trade. I think it's a good entrance. Can I have the next slide, please? So the Vikings, who all second generation kids will have studied in their schooling, were a great people of linking the Middle East to Western Europe. And this map shows you the kind of the influence of the Vikings across Europe, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East. And from them, or through them, and their trading routes, which were both via land and also sea, managed to connect the Middle East to Western Europe through exchange, barter, and buying and selling. Can I have the next slide, please? So the evidence of this movement of the Vikings and the commodities they carried back and forth between the Middle East and Europe is this amazing hoard, a silver hoard that was found in Sweden and included silver from basically the Abbasid period in the Middle East. And you can see the types of material that was found. So from coins, which were the currencies that were carried and exchanged, to metals, and silver is a predominant metal because Europe needed silver, and the Islamic world from Afghanistan across into the Middle East was a supplier of silver. So in the hundreds of thousands of coins the Vikings carried from the Middle East into Europe, and they were melted to make other things or were used as currency for exchange of products. And this example, so the second example is part of that hoard, but shows you one of the far-flung coins that came all the way from Samanid, Afghanistan, so where Balkh today is, famous cities, or Nishapur was part of that domain in northeastern Iran. And you can see how they've transferred or transformed a coin into a pendant to hang as a precious object to wear. Can I have the next slide, please? But more importantly is what did arrive as far as Britain. And there are two hoards in the British Museum that represent this material. The first is the silver hoard, and the top photograph to the right is a hoard that was found in Querdale, which is in Lancashire, near Preston today. And this hoard was 40 kilograms of silver, put in a lead chest and buried. And they don't know why the Vikings did that. It happened in somewhere around 910 AD. So at the height of the Abbasid period. And it included very many Abbasid coins, as well as other coins from across Europe. And it also included other objects, jewelry and other types of material. They think that the reason why it was buried in this big chest is the Vikings were preparing to invade Ireland, and they needed money. And something happened in Lancashire, near Preston, and they had to bury it. And it stayed there till the 19th century and was found. And the whole lot was presented to Queen Victoria, and Queen Victoria donated it to the British Museum. So there's interesting displays in the museum if you go to look for the Querdale hoard. And the important thing about the Querdale hoard is the coins, the Abbasid coins in it, were contemporary to the time it was buried. So imagine from Baghdad, a 903 coin by al-Mu'tadid travels all the way, land route, through Bahar Qazwin and across Europe through river routes by the Vikings and reaches Preston and gets buried in 9010. So it's not a legacy of an earlier time and they're moving coins as precious metals. This is trade route material. Some of in that group, there's also jewelry and ingots of silver having been prepared so that they can be reused to make new jewelry. So that's one story. The next one is the gold. Sorry, could you go back one slide, please? The gold hoard there is also very important. This hoard was found off the coast of Devon in a site called Salcombe Cannon site. And it's a location in the sea, in the bay in Devon, that many ships have sunk. And there are two particular ships next to each other. One is a Bronze Age ship, and one is this 17th century ship. And they don't know the identity of this ship. They think it may be a Dutch ship. And it had been somewhere around Morocco, brought over thousands of Moroccan gold coins and other materials on the ship, and it sank in Devon. It was found in the 1990s, and the British Museum bought the hoard. So, you know, in modern Britain, if you find gold, you know, metal detecting and that kind, there is a law to govern that, how the finder is compensated for the material they have found. And so this is part of that process where the finders were able to be compensated by money, and the hoard was purchased for the British Museum. The interesting thing is the Moroccan coins come from a period when the Moroccan rulers had spread their control all the way to Timbuktu in sub-Saharan Africa. And the land routes you see at the bottom of the map show you the kind of network that these Moroccans, and of course the coastal stops that such a Dutch ship would have encountered them on. So the interconnected world, I think, is very well exemplified by these two hoards. And the last object on this slide is a cross. And this is a brooch, so a pin, basically, for fixing onto a garment. In the center of this cross is an Islamic seal. So, and on this seal is written, Tubna Lillah. The seal is made of glass, so it's not a precious black stone, it's actually black glass that has been engraved with the two words, Tubna Lillah, no dots, so it looks a bit abstract. And it is a seal because it's back to front, so it's not a charm. The cross itself, with its seal, was found in Cork, in Ireland, in a location called Ballycotton. And it was found in the 19th century. The scholars, the European art scholars, believe that the cross belongs to a type made in France, regardless of the seal, so the metal object itself, and belongs to this Carolingian Empire that existed during the 8th and 9th centuries in Central Europe, let's say, or Central Western Europe. They don't know how and why this little seal has been fixed to the cross. The British Museum, when they got it in the 1990s, prized out the seal. So they took it off to see what was on the back. They wanted to understand it, and it's plain, totally plain. But what they noticed was the edges of the seal were beveled. So when it was made to sit in something that clasps onto it. and there was damage. And the damage seems to tell them that this seal was fixed to something else before it ended up on the cloth. So it was seized out of another setting and then fixed. And that, now, no one knows. Did they know the value, the importance of the words on it? Was it treated especially for another reason? It obviously was important enough to fix on a religious shape, symbol like. And that's an interconnectedness that we don't expect. And there are lots of them when you start looking carefully at material culture, where items have been reused or reset for another community's use. Next, please. And of course, astrolabes are part of our interconnectedness. They originate in Greece. The Arabs improved them when Arab science developed and was able to be more accurate in their function. And of course, the Europeans also use them. And this is an important example because it shows you multi-use or let's say subsequent use. So it's an Andalusian, Spanish, Arab astrolabe. It has Latin words carved on it as well. These were added later, which indicates that this astrolabe, which is only the size of my hand, stayed in use. And as language changed, the Latin words and numbers were added so that the object remained functional. Because if you couldn't read the Arabic, you wouldn't be able to align the stars or read the time or measure the relationship between the sun and specific stars. And a very interesting object that shows this kind of continuity from one culture to another for an instrument. Next, please. This is just to show you what an astrolabe looks like and its parts. And if you look at the image to the left, you can see how words, and we talk about languages here, you can see how the Arabic words have been modified in the pronunciation. So you have the ankabut is the top surface that has all the markings of the pinpoint locations of stars, and it's become the retta. And the plates, so the lawhat or lawha, are just called plates in English. And of course, the halaqa is the ring, and the kursi is the throne, and the which is the main body that holds everything in it or sits them all in, is called the mater, because everything sits within it, so it's a mater. And then the al-addada, which is the ruler, the long ruler on the reverse side of the astrolabe, has retained its name, but now it's called alidada. They pronounce, because al-addada becomes alidada. Right, next please. And the last thing I want to talk about is we talked about trade and we talked about science and the continuity and exchange. And the last thing I want to talk about is technology itself and manufacturing and how technology moves. And the example here I give you is the whole wide range of lusterware. Ceramic lusterware is an ancient technique that existed in Roman times and died out and then was rediscovered or reinvented, depending, in Iraq. And some of the earliest examples are from Samarra. And this technology of coloring or decorating a ceramic surface with a metallic sheen is quite a complicated one, and was guarded as a secret, like in potters' families. And as they moved, as they migrated from Iraq eastwards and westwards, they took with them this technology, and it got embedded in other countries. So Syria, Cairo, Egypt, and then crosses over into Andalusia. And from Andalusia, it crosses to Italy. And then from Italy, it spreads in more recent times into Europe, right up to Britain. And the little tiles at the bottom of the photograph on the left are British experimentations in the 20th century for the production of this particular type of ceramic lusterware. And above them are fragments of original lusterwares from the Middle East found in Cairo and in Iraq. And of course, the objects in the other photographs show you Italian examples and Spanish ones, as well as English examples at the top. And I conclude with that.
Thank you very much. It was a really excellent presentation here. Thank you very much for both of you. I give you a lot of things which I wasn't aware about. That's a question.
Thank you very much. The most informative lecture. Thank you. I wonder about where would you place ethnic tiles and the ethnic style of glazing, pottery, and mosaics?
That is later, and it's a different technology. It's as in a process of manufacture. So ethnic pottery, it's a frit body covered with a opaque white glaze, a white slip. So that's a clay, another clay, but it's liquid, and you dip the object in it. And then you paint with the colors you want to go on it, the glazes, and then you glaze them as well. And it's a one firing. Lusterwares require 3 firings, so they're very expensive as ceramics because the potter has to light the kiln 3 times to generate the objects. And of course, there's the metal used in the lusters. The isniks don't have metals, they are enamels and pigments that are used.
Do you agree that the Islamic colors of glazing and ceramics, the white and blue, which we associate with Islamic art, that it truly came from China?
No. Blue and white was first, how do you say, not invented, but as a fashion for ceramics colored in blue and white, started in Basra. And it's the Basra ceramics went to China. And China started to produce blue and white for export. They didn't like it. They had their own styles for domestic use, and this was purely for export. So it was exported back to the Middle East, and the urban societies of Iran and Turkey fell in love with it, and it escalated the industry to the global industry that we know now.
Thank you.
I'm going to mix my question to
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, we talk about Gutian and Lulian language, and you characterize the area where it is held, it's Suleymaniya and Kirkuk. And then you said there is no text arrived. So how could you characterize the area where it is? First of all, are those languages alive languages at the moment, or dead languages, gone?
We have only few words in this language I mentioned. The name of kings and places in these languages. And what we know about these peoples from inscriptions in Mesopotamia. So when the Assyrians invaded this area, they mentioned the name of kings and the area. And the Akkadian, in their inscriptions, they mentioned the Lulubian and the Gutian. They had war with these peoples. And as I mentioned, the Gutian invaded Mesopotamia and could destroy the Akkadian Empire. And texts mention these people only, especially texts from the Middle and New Assyrian period. They mention the land of Zamwa, Suleymani. Suleymani at that time was called Zamwa. So where the Gutian and Lulubians lived in that area.
Thank you very much. I think one point which I also learned from here. So civilization or nation could be vanish, and the new generation with new culture and civilization could replace that old one, isn't it?
Never as sudden. It's always a gradual. And the evidence you gave, words appearing in Sumerian that are not Sumerian, the influence of other languages. So the Sumerians didn't vanish overnight. They were absorbed by the other civilizations.
So people in the ancient Near East, like today, influenced each other. So through the war and the merchants and trade and even schools. So people learned at schools like today in Mesopotamia. So as I mentioned, Sumerian was taught even at the time. Sumerian was not more spoken. So in the area. And we have now words in Arabic and Kurdish from old languages. I can't, in Sumerian, sometimes I counter, words are identical with Kurdish words.
Understand. But as a whole,
immigration, we immigrate, don't we?
Exactly.
And we do it today. They did it as well. Many tribal groups moved from the east into Mesopotamia and brought with them their cultures. And it depends how quickly the group come or how large it is or small.
Mention something. So for example, the Assyrian, when they invaded Syria and other area, they deported hundreds of thousands of people from one area to the other area.
Exactly.
So Middle Assyrian kings, so in the 8th century, for example, in a short time, they mentioned that they deported 190,000 Aramean people from the west of Syria. You can imagine.
At that time,
it is a huge number.
190,000 is
so
idiotic.
basically,
It's huge.
If you agree with me,
they deported people from the Zagros to the Syria, to Hama, to Palestine, and people from Palestine to the Zagros area and to Iran.
So in this case, would you agree with me that all the cultures are man-made, mingled with previous civilization, and this new civilization or new cultures come up?
Of course. I mean, there is no such thing that starts from zero. Everything
there's nothing called purely 100%. This
has a legacy in other times and cultures.
Absolutely.
So in a sense, that's a positive thing from my perspective because it means you're a stakeholder in all these other legacy cultures.
Absolutely.
I always used to say, because my grandmother, her grandfather's maternal grandfather's father came from Georgia, from Ajara, I have a claim on the Georgians. When Georgia is mentioned in the news, I feel an affinity with them. and it's like 3-4 generations from my mother's side, you know. Why not? It's a great thing.
Well, that's the beauty of humanity actually here, because we have to think about it, that we are not pure bloods or new pure civilization. We are coming from mixed people. It's just human development here. But
If you analyze your DNA now, just to try to analyze your DNA.
I don't need to try it. Try it. I think Mijda, she's very upset with me. Are we behind our schedule? Yes. What we're now doing? Okay. So in this case, thank you very much for both of you. I really enjoy it. Thank you very much.